You know that feeling? You meet someone, they tell you their name, and poof, it's gone just seconds later? Well, today we're going to dive into the classic blueprint of your mind that explains exactly why that happens, and more importantly, how you can turn any thought into a memory that sticks around for good. Let's jump in.
I mean, we've all been there, haven't we? That super awkward moment. You're introduced to someone, they say their name, and it just vanishes. It's like it never even entered your brain. So what's actually happening there? Well, believe it or not, a really elegant model from way back in 1968 can help us figure it out.
So this is it. Think of this as the map to your memory. It's called the Atkinson Shiffrin model, and it's based on this really simple but kind of brilliant idea. Memories are made on an assembly line. Information comes in, moves through 3 different stops, and then, if it's lucky, gets filed away for good. So let's take a walk down that line.
All right, our first stop on this journey is right at the front door, sensory memory. You can picture it as this incredibly busy, chaotic reception lobby for your brain. Everything you see, hear, and feel comes rushing through here first.
Now, this lobby is all about perfect, high-definition copies, but they don't stick around. It's not trying to make sense of anything. It's literally just holding a raw, unfiltered snapshot of the world for a fraction of a second, just long enough for your brain to go, is any of this important? Before it all disappears.
And here's where it gets really cool. Different senses get different amounts of time in this lobby. The stuff you see, that's called iconic memory. It's gone in like half a second. But the things you hear, your echoic memory, that can hang around for 2, 3, even 4 seconds. It's basically your brain's built-in instant replay function. You know when you're not really listening and someone asks you a question and you say what, but then the answer pops into your head? Yeah, that's echoic memory at work.
Okay, so you've got this constant, massive flood of information hitting you every single second. So what happens to most of it? It gets thrown out, instantly. The only thing that gets past this stage, the tiny little fraction you actually consciously pay attention to, gets a VIP pass to the next room. So yeah, attention is basically the bouncer at the club door of your memory.
All right, so if your attention lets some information pass the velvet rope, where does it go? Welcome to stop number 2, short-term memory. This is your mind's temporary workspace. If sensory memory was the lobby, this is the main desk where you're actively working on stuff. It's kind of like the RAM on your computer.
So remember that name you just heard. If you paid attention, it made it here, to this workspace. It's active, it's right there in your consciousness. But, and this is a big but, the key word here is temporary. That information is on a ticking clock.
Yeah, if you don't actively do something with that name, it's going to fade away in about 15 to 30 seconds. That's it. That's why the second your friend taps you on the shoulder to ask a question right after you've heard a name, it's gone. The clock just ran out. And it's not just the clock you're fighting against, it's also the size of your desk. Your mental workbench is tiny. There's this famous idea from psychologist George Miller called the magical number 7, plus or minus 2. It means your short-term memory can really only hold about 5 to 9 pieces of information at any one time. That's not a lot, right?
But of course, our brains have a life hack for this. It's called chunking. Think about a phone number. Trying to remember 10 separate digits, that's too much. But if you group them into 3 chunks, the area code, the next 3, and the last 4, suddenly it's just 3 items instead of 10. See? Easy. It's this brilliant little trick we use to expand the capacity of our tiny mental workspace.
So, besides chunking, you've got one other major tool to keep that info alive on your workbench. It's called maintenance rehearsal. And honestly, it's exactly what it sounds like. You just repeat it, over and over and over again. You know, like chanting a phone number to yourself until you can write it down. Every time you say it, you're basically hitting the reset button on that 15 to 30-second countdown.
Okay, so if you've paid attention and you've rehearsed that information enough to keep it from fading away, it finally gets promoted. It's ready for the final destination on our tour, the vast, almost infinite archive that is your long-term memory.
Yep, this is the brain's hard drive. This is where all the important stuff that you've processed gets filed away for keeps. And when we say for keeps, we mean it. We're talking about memories that can stick with you for days, for years, or for your entire life.
So, unlike that tiny workbench with its ticking clock, this place is basically infinite. The capacity is, for all practical purposes, unlimited. And it doesn't just store stuff randomly, it's organized by meaning.
That's why it holds everything from facts you learned in school, your declarative memories, to skills that are second nature, like riding a bike, your non-declarative memories.
So let's look at this whole thing as a superhighway for your memories. Attention is the on-ramp, right? It gets information from the sensory world into your short-term memory. Rehearsal is you hitting the gas pedal, keeping that information moving and pushing it toward the long-term exit. And retrieval? Well, that's just taking a different exit to bring an old memory back from the archive so you can use it again.
So we've gone on this whole journey. The big question is, how well does this old map from 1968 actually hold up today? Well, it was absolutely groundbreaking. But, like any early map of a new continent, it got the big shapes right, but missed a lot of the details.
On the one hand, its biggest strength is just how simple and clear it is. It's so logical. It gave researchers a fantastic starting point and kicked off decades of incredible work. But, on the other hand, we now know that it's too simple. Memory isn't always this neat one-way street. And we figured out that short-term and long-term memory aren't just single storage boxes, they're more like complex systems with a bunch of moving parts.
But hey, even with those limitations, the basic idea is still super useful. I mean, just look at this summary. It really puts it all into perspective, right? You go from this massive wave of raw data that lasts seconds, down to a tiny workspace that holds a few items for half a minute, and finally into this limitless archive that can last a lifetime. It's just a really powerful, simple way to start understanding how your own mind works.
So, what's the big takeaway here? What does this old model teach us today? It's this. Memory isn't passive. It's not something that just happens to you. It's an active process, and you're in the driver's seat. Attention is your steering wheel, and rehearsal is the gas pedal. You are the one who decides what's important enough to keep. You choose what fades away and what gets to become a part of you forever. So, that leaves me with one last question for you. What will you choose to remember?